Hi everyone, my name is Heather. I'm the owner of Leavenly.com, and today in this video we're going to be talking about the entire sourdough process from start to finish. Likely you're a beginner or an intermediate baker and you're overwhelmed with all the information out there online. And trust me, I know, because I was there too. One person will say one thing, someone else says something completely different or the polar opposite, and it's like, how do I even start with all this information? So my point of this video is to cut through the noise and show you kind of a bird's eye perspective of what the entire sourdough process looks like. If you want to take it to the next level, join us by clicking the link below to the Sourdough Beginner's Kit. The Sourdough Beginner's Kit basically walks you through the whole process from start to finish, from building your very own starter to making a leaven, to making the bread, to discard recipes, what you're going to do with all that extra starter as you're feeding it. So that link is down below, and if you are joining us from the Beginner's Kit, let's get started. So the 3-day method is what I really recommend for busy people. And it sounds like it's a lot, but just remember that it's really not. It's actually less time in the kitchen per day. So the 3-day method is basically, it works best if you work backwards. So let's think for a second. I want to have fresh bread on Sunday. So that's going to be my bake day. Right? Saturday then would be my mix day. That's the day that I'm gonna put my hands in the dough, mix it, shape it, get it in the baskets and put it in the fridge. So then Friday would be my leaven day. That's the day that I build my leaven, and that's only a 5-minute process right before bed. You're gonna build up your leaven, we're gonna talk about that in a minute, right before bed. So that's your first day of the 3-day process. So that's the best approach for busy people to tackle sourdough. And basically what you're going to do before that point is to feed your starter every 12 hours 3 times before you build your leaven. That's my own personal advice from my own experience. That's to make sure that your starter is super active, really strong, and it's going to be strong enough to leaven your bread in the oven. So you're going to want to make sure your starter is nice and active. Even if you feed it every day, amp it up to twice a day right before the process starts. So let's get started talking about day 1. Day 1 is called Leaven Day, and for a good reason, because that's the day that we're going to mix our leaven. And your leaven is basically the middleman between your starter and your bread, your dough. The leaven is basically a supersized starter in a larger jar. You're taking a little bit of your starter into a large jar and you're going to feed it more flour, more water, so you have a large amount, and then you're going to add that into your dough. And that's what's going to give your bread the rising power in the oven. So we're going to build your leaven on day 1, and you're going to leave that on the countertop. You're going to go to bed. Okay, now day 1 is done, easy. Then when you get up the next day, you're going to test the leaven in what we call the float test. You're going to want to do it as soon as you wake up, and what you're going to do is get a cup of water and put a spoon in it, get the spoon wet, and then scoop it into the leaven, take a little bit out and kind of plop it right into the water. If it floats on top, that tells us that it is ready to bake with. So we're ready to go, let's get started. If it doesn't float and it sinks right to the bottom, then we need to do some fixing and adjusting. Maybe you kind of missed the little window and it went too far, in which case you can add like a tablespoon of flour and a tablespoon of water and stir it all in. Then you may have to wait another hour or 2, but it should be ready again within the same day. So that's absolutely fixable. So that's the first part of the process on day 2 on our mix day. Okay, so when your leaven passes the float test, then we're going to start mixing our bread. You're going to get out your bowl, you're going to weigh your ingredients. Okay, so you're going to want a kitchen scale. I rant about this a lot on different platforms and on various videos, so I'm not going to dive into it now, but you should get a kitchen scale. Then you're going to weigh out your water, your leaven, and your flours, okay? Then you're going to mix them all by hand, and then we're going to let that sit, and this is called the autolyse period. And the autolyse period basically allows that flour to get fully hydrated from the water. It activates enzymes, it gets your microbes nice and active and going, and everything gets moving. And this process can be minimum 30 minutes up to a couple hours. And then your next step is to add the salt. So you're going to add a small amount of salt. Typically, in my recipe, it's 22 grams of salt, and you're gonna sprinkle it over the dough. Then you're gonna sprinkle on a little bit of extra water, and then you're gonna poke your fingers down into the dough and really incorporate that salt. Then you're gonna fold it, do the pincer method, whatever way that you find is best to really incorporate that salt throughout the dough. Then from this point, we're gonna be doing the folds. So if you are at sea level or up to about 2,000 feet, I recommend a fold every 30 minutes. And if you're 2,000 feet or above, like I am, I'm in Golden, Colorado, 5,700 feet, I do a fold every 20 minutes. And either case, it would be for 2 hours. Okay, so if you're at sea level, you're gonna fold 4 times. And if you're at high altitude, you're gonna fold 6 times. Basically, a fold is when you put your hands under the dough and you're gonna pull it up and fold it over itself. Then you're gonna twist the bowl 180 degrees and fold it up and over itself. Then you twist the bowl 90 degrees and do the exact same thing. Lift it up, fold it over, and then twist it 180 degrees, lift it up and fold it over. These series of folds is gonna give that gluten lots and lots of strength, and it's gonna make that gluten network super strong to be able to hold on to the CO2 gas that's released from your microbes as everything is fermenting. So this is really important to fold your dough. So after the folding period, by the way, the folding period is also what's called the bulk fermentation. After the folding period, you're into your bulk rest, which is also the bulk fermentation period. It's kind of a period of about 2 to 4 hours depending on your altitude. And the bulk rest is basically where you cover your dough and you walk away. And it's gonna just rest, the gluten is gonna relax, and it's gonna have time to ferment a little bit more. You're not looking for it to rise tremendously. You're certainly not looking for it to double like you would in a typical yeasted bread recipe. Sourdough is a completely different beast. So basically we're just letting it rest. So then after the bulk fermentation time is done, we're gonna pre-shape. So you take your bowl of dough and you're gonna dump it onto the countertop. You're gonna divide your large amount of dough into 3 pieces. Then you're gonna take one piece, fold the side over and fold it over, and then you're gonna fold the top over and then fold the bottom over. And that's all you're gonna do for now, because the gluten needs a little bit more time to rest after you've kind of worked with it. Same thing for the other 2 pieces, and that's gonna rest on your counter for 30 minutes. Then after the pre-shape period, we're going to shape our loaves. If you're making boules, you're gonna shape them into tight round balls. And if you're making batards, you're gonna do a different shaping process that's gonna end up with more of a rectangular or oval shape dough. Once the shaping is done, you're going to flip your dough up into your floured bannetons, and then that's gonna proof. You're gonna cover those with plastic and you're gonna put those in the fridge for your cold proofing time. And this is the most valuable part for busy people, because if you don't cold proof, you're gonna be proofing on the countertop and then you're gonna have to bake that same day, and it's just a lot of time in the kitchen. This is why we cold proof. You put it in the fridge and you forget about it until the next morning, until the next afternoon, until the next evening, maybe the morning after. A whole day later. You can leave your dough in the fridge 30 plus hours. Some people have done 2 days, some people have done 3 days because they forgot about it and they baked it anyway and it turned out great. So there's so much flexibility. I do recommend baking it the next day if you can, but when you bake it, morning, afternoon, evening, doesn't matter at all. It's completely up to you. Then you're done with day 2. Okay, that's all mixed day. You're gonna put it in the fridge. It's gonna cold proof. Then day 3 is your bake day. So you're gonna wake up and you're gonna, or whenever, like I said, during the day, whenever you wanna bake your dough, you're gonna turn on your oven to screaming hot 475 and put your Dutch oven or your combo cooker or your Challenger bread pan in the oven to preheat as well. That's all gonna get nice and hot. I would let it preheat for a minimum of 45 minutes, well beyond the period when your oven tells you it's ready, because that lets everything get screaming hot. so that when you pull your bread from the fridge, you're gonna flip it out of its basket, then you're gonna score it cold, and you're gonna put it on your baking vessel cold. Put the lid on and tuck it away in the oven. Reduce the temperature a little bit. You're gonna bake that for 30 minutes. That, with the lid on, is gonna create a bunch of steam around the dough, and that steam is absolutely critical for an amazing home loaf. Commercial bakeries have steam injection ovens. Home ovens are designed to vent the steam and vent humidity. So we need to kind of create our own steam around that loaf, and that's what the lid is doing. After that 30 minutes, you're gonna take the lid off, and then it's gonna be exposed to the direct heat of the oven. So you're gonna notice at this point, it's gonna be turning darker brown. When you first take the lid off, it'll be light. Then after the 15 minutes, you're gonna take it out, it's gonna be a darker brown, it's gonna be beautiful. And then you pull it out of the oven, put it on a cooling rack, and let it cool for, I'd say, a minimum of 2 hours before you cut into it. And I know that's hard. That's probably the hardest part of this entire process, is waiting for it to cool so that you can cut into it. That basically is the process from start to finish. That's the 3-day method that I recommend for busy people, and it's really very simple. And don't think you have to remember every single step that I just went through, okay? It's all listed in the beginner's kit. So if you're not in the beginner's kit, check out the link below to join us. And if you are watching from the beginner's kit, then great, let's head on to the next section and let's get baking.